What's good, everybody? I'm Derek Davis. I'm your host, and you're watching the Vigilant podcast. Today, I have the esteemed privilege to interview our presiding elder of the Midwest Conference North District, presiding elder, Reverend John Cager. How you doing, John, presiding elder?
I am blessed and highly favored, Derek, and I appreciate the opportunity to come and share on the Vigilant podcast.
Yes, it's great to have you. When I first we've been trying to get this together for a couple of months, and I it just can seem to get right on my part. But I'm glad we got it together tonight, today, and we're gonna get started right now. I'm gonna be asking him a couple questions about his ministry and everything. So our first question that I have for you is where did you attend college and seminary at?
Well, I went to Miami University in Oxford, Ohio for my undergraduate degree. I was the first Black student body president there. Then, when I came into the ministry, I was in Los Angeles. I went first to the Ecumenical Center for Black Church Studies, which
Mm-hmm.
was started by the great Dr. Henry Mitchell. And then I finished at Fuller Theological Seminary in Pasadena, California.
Okay, and then um I've read that you when you think about were you a part of any fraternities?
Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. God put me in touch with a group of brothers who were not only about it, but who were serious about it. And I was serious about it. And so it's been a
Okay.
great journey.
Okay. Are you grateful for your journey?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. And I messed up on the it wouldn't let me move this. Who is John Cager?
John Cager is a presiding elder in the Midwest North Annual Conference, a husband, a
Mm-hmm.
father, a grandfather who spent 35 years in ministry in the African Methodist Episcopal Church, born in Cleveland, Ohio, went to high school in St. Louis, Missouri, served in the United States Navy, and has been on the battlefield for the Lord since 1989.
Okay. You when you say that you were you served in the United States Army, so that means you're a veteran.
I'm a veteran of the United States Navy, absolutely, and I am proud for all of those who served in uniform. People don't realize it, but we have a lot of pastors in the African Methodist Church who are former military or former law enforcement or both. And so, even though we are about that social justice, we've also been right at the forefront of serving our country.
Social justice. I want to pick your brain on that. What do you think about what are your thoughts on social justice?
The AME Church was founded and grew because of its commitment to
Mm-hmm.
social justice. It wasn't just the preaching on Sunday morning that made a difference in our growth. It was the fact that we were out in the community. We were critical in Philadelphia's yellow fever outbreak. We were ministering to people when other churches were shuttered up. We were critical in the Underground Railroad. We were critical in the abolitionist movement. We were critical in the movement for equal rights, not just for people of color, but for women as well. We have always been out there where the people are. Jesus spent very little time in the temple. He spent a whole lot of time in the highways and the hedges and the byways, meeting people where they were and addressing their needs. Jesus got in trouble with the temple hierarchy because Jesus was out there with those folks that the temple didn't want to mess with.
Mm-hmm. So I would agree with you because I really think that social justice is very important. And then I was reading in your bio you were your church when you pastored Ward AME in Los Angeles. You were the one of the pastors that were influential when Emmanuel 9 had that the shooting. Am I correct?
Well, and I have to say, AME churches around the connection
Yes. Okay.
all stood up at the time when we had to deal with the brutal slaying of folks at Mother Emanuel,
Yes.
Charleston, and we certainly led some community efforts in Southern California and the greater state of California. But the bigger issue is that we were in position to lead because of the stuff that we did before the Emmanuel Nine. I can say that well prior to my becoming the pastor there at Ward, there was a pastor named now Bishop Frank Madison Reed III. People froze to death on the
Mm.
streets of Los Angeles in November 1987. The city asked churches to do something about it. Frank Reed went to his officers and said, "We got folks freezing, and we don't do anything with this sanctuary 6 days a week. Let's bring the homeless into the church and house them." And the trustees said no, but
Mm.
Bishop Reed did it anyway. He brought in 150 homeless folks to sleep in the church sanctuary, got the missionaries to cook food for them. The church had showers because they had a basketball court. Let the homeless folks shower in the church. And that turned into what is now the city of Los Angeles cold and wet weather shelter, where thousands of people are housed during the rainy season and the cold season in Southern California. My claim to fame is that the program had ended at Ward, but when I got there, I brought it back, and we housed the homeless there for a number of years, as we did when I pastored Second AME Church in
Mm-hmm.
Los Angeles as well.
Okay, I would, because when I was reading, I said, "Get out of here," because I work with a community organization in Kansas City called KCOG,
Mm-hmm.
keeping communities on guard, and we do community work, and that's our mission statement is to strive to make the community better and to make it better one step at a time. So when I read your bio, I was like, "Oh, that made me so happy to see that you were a community advocate to the Los Angeles community."
Mm-hmm. And people wonder why we see a decline in church attendance
Mm-hmm.
participation. That's generally because we've seen a decline in church engagement in the community. People
Mm-hmm.
come to a church when they feel like the church is attentive to their needs. We can't just go in and shout on Sunday and talk about how great the service was from 11 to 12:45 or however long we're in there and think that is sufficient to advance the word of God. People want to know where we stand on the police shooting our black kids. People want to know where the church stands on our black children underperforming in schools. People want to know what the church's plan is to help our people who are dealing with being underpaid and overworked and underhoused and overstressed. The church, the black church, the African Methodist Episcopal Church, has been most effective when it's been helping people meet their needs, not just their spiritual needs, but
Mm-hmm.
their physical needs. Because remember, when Jesus preached to the 5,000, he also fed them.
Yes, I would agree. It's just it's like what I find difficult down. This is just my opinion. The when you go when the community goes inside the church to help them, it's just like it's difficult because the church, they don't want to mess up their programs, and they don't want to mess up what they've been doing for years. But I say we have to do something different if we want to change our direction.
You're absolutely right. People must realize the church has always been flexible and changing.
Mm-hmm.
We don't worship the same way Richard Allen worshiped 208 years ago. We
Mm-hmm.
don't worship the same way Bishop Henry McNeil Turner and them worshiped 120 years ago. But somehow, in this stage of our existence, a lot of our churches have fallen in love with nostalgia, and they don't want to change things from the way it was when grandmama and them worship. But
Mm-hmm.
but that does not work. One of the issues we have in our churches is that it's full of senior citizens. And trust me, as a senior citizen, I
Mm-hmm.
love senior citizens.
Mm-hmm.
Having a church full of senior citizens doesn't isn't a good growth strategy. Isn't a good survival strategy? Because as we senior citizens go on to glory, we don't have anyone in the seats to take our places. How
Mm-hmm.
do we get people in the seats to take our places? We make sure that the ministry is vibrant and relevant to the generation that's coming up. Even as it ministers to the needs of the seniors, and yeah, we pay a lot of the bills. If we want the church to go on and to grow on, we have to make sure that we are accommodating for and ministering to and programming for the next generation.
Go out into the community.
And go out into the community and bring them in. And yes, maybe some of the young men's pants are sagging, and maybe some of the young women got tattoos and piercings in their nose and whatnot. So what? We had stuff back in our day that the old folks didn't understand, but we
Mm-hmm.
love the Lord. Young folks are more than happy to love the Lord as long as they don't have to come into a place where they're placed under constant judgment.
Mm-hmm. I would agree. I would agree with you because it's just it's we're fighting an uphill battle that we can't seem to win, but we can win if we put our faith and trust in God and get try to get this done because it I mean we've been fighting this battle for so many years and it's like are we ever gonna finish the race that we're trying to get done, finish the job?
Well, the understanding has to be the work is in the race. You're
Mm-hmm.
done in heaven. Until you get to heaven, we will constantly be on the battlefield fighting. The devil ain't quit. He ain't gone away.
Mm-hmm.
Racism hasn't quit. Sexism hasn't quit. You know, economic inequality hasn't quit. So we can't quit. Every generation has their own work that they have to do. And for communities of color, particularly the African Methodist Episcopal Church, we also have to be certain that we're not working just for our generation, but we're leaving something for the next generation.
Yes, yes, yes. I would agree with you. And then, when I when I was reading your bio, in your bio, I saw you were the youth pastor of First AME, LA, and manager for the Fame Renaissance. Explain what that is, if you don't mind.
Okay, well, youth pastor was fairly straightforward. I was at a church that had at its peak 18,000 members, and
Mm-hmm.
I was in charge with a team of providing spiritual guidance and preparation for our young folks. The church had a lot of offerings for youth. We had a nationally known youth choir, but we also had programs that spoke to gang abatement, male reclamation. We had a program called Lock In on Values that we pioneered in Los Angeles in the 80s, where we would take the kids from Friday evening to Saturday morning, work not just on spiritual topics, but also on life skills topics. We had a program called A Man Child, where we would work with young Black males in a rites of passage program. Had a similar program for females, young females, and the focus of it was to instill the love of God, but also the love of service to community in our young folks. As project manager of Fame Renaissance, I was over the transportation program. That program grew out of the Rodney King riots in
Mm-hmm.
1992. Much of South Los Angeles burned. There were no grocery stores, there were no pharmacies, there were no banks. The banks were coming in and cutting the vaults out of their buildings and taking them away. And so we had a number of seniors and disabled persons who were in the riot area who couldn't get to the grocery store, couldn't get to their medical appointments. The buses had stopped running. And so, with the transportation program, we worked with the County of Los Angeles to establish a taxi coupon program where we gave taxi vouchers to the aged and the disabled so that they can make it to a grocery store in another part of town, make it to their doctor's appointments. And that program is still ongoing 32 years later.
Mm. Wow. That's when I was just so astonished when I read that. I'm like, oh my! And then it's like you know, if you have a project like I'm working on this project right now with the podcast, that I'm trying to bring everyone into it, but I'm finding difficulty running this project because people are not so used to the podcasting world. I'm just now getting started, getting used to it. I know more than I knew now when I first started, but I really think that this the podcast will be beneficial to the church because it could expand our horizons to where we once was. If you agree, because I wrote a proposal that I shared with a couple pastors, and I'm still waiting for them to get back to me on that. Um, I really think this would change. This can change the church for the better, in my opinion. I don't know about anyone else's opinion, but it's beneficial because we've been doing church the same way, and then when it's like our young people are leaving the church because they have nothing else to be offered. The YPD is from 18 from 2 to 26, but after 26 I know there's RIAC but in LA, but sometimes you need something that can just appeal to the much younger folks for something they can do.
You're speaking right to the heart of the matter. Where the church is empty is in the 20 to 45-year-old range.
Mm-hmm.
How do we program to them? The Black church in particular has always been behind the technology curve. We always look at, these non-denominational churches that are growing. What are they doing? One of the things that they've done great that the mainstream church has not done is adapt technology, use streaming, use podcasts,
Mm-hmm.
use electronic resources to reach folks, because most of our churches are no longer neighborhood churches. The folks have moved away, the neighborhood has changed, and there are a lot of churches that are engaging, a lot of growing churches that are engaging people electronically, because you may not be able to drive 30 miles to the church in the neighborhood where you used to live, but you can pick up your phone. You can if you're on your way to work and you didn't make it to church on Sunday, you can listen to the podcast in your car while you're
Mm-hmm.
on your way to find out about relevant topics. You can get 30 or 60-second or 90-second Instagram or TikTok videos that are sent from the church. But our
Mm-hmm.
churches are very often are so behind the technology curve. It's not that we don't want to do it; we don't know how to do it because we run all the young folk out who have the ability to utilize technology and media.
Mm-hmm. I really think I would agree with you because it's so easy, but they people have to get to a place where they have to get ready for change.
And they have to be comfortable with
Yes.
letting the change happen. You are nowhere near old enough to understand this, but in my parents' day, there was a huge backlash against churches using guitars and drums,
Mm-hmm.
saxophones, bring in instruments other than the organ and the piano. Now, if your church only has a piano or an organ, they say you're a little country church.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have a band. But there were people who 60, 70 years ago, 80 years ago, thought that was of the devil.
Mm-hmm.
Gospel music, which is old hat for young folks like you, the music of James Cleveland that so many of our seniors love, that was banned in churches because they said that was the world's music, and we didn't need that in the church. So uh,
Mm.
every generation has to deal with change and understand how change can be beneficial.
Yes, I really. The AME Church is built on change.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We walked out of St. George's Methodist Episcopal Church not only because of their racism, but because they weren't lively enough. We like to shout, and we like to holler when we pray and when we sing and when we preach. And we went somewhere where we could express ourselves.
Yes, I would agree. And then this is like it's like this next question I have is where is your ministry taking you in the AME Church so far?
Well, because we have so many daggone minutes, so many daggone meetings in the Enemy Church, I've been coast to coast and out of the country. But in terms of pastoral ministry, I started at First Enemy Church in Los Angeles as the youth pastor. Then, because there were no churches available for me at the time, I was loaned to the Presbyterian Church.
I read that.
Pastored the Presbyterian Church for 4 years in Baldwin Hills, California. Finally, the AMEs gave me a church, St. Stephen AME Church. It was typical. I had 4 little members, but we had a building in a distressed part of town. We were blessed to be able to build that 4 into about 30 something members in our first year. Got moved to Fontana, California after that, and then Fontana came to a church that was under assault by the city. The city was trying to take the church's land by eminent domain and pay us $30,000 for the land. Had to fight them in court, but ultimately we ended up getting $1.4 million out of the city. A portion of which went to build a new church under the leadership of now Bishop Francine Brookins when she followed me there. I was the Pastor of the Year award from the local newspapers out there because of not only our work in fighting the city to get equity for the church, but also we stood up on some social justice issues, which was not popular in Fontana, which was the place of the last Ku Klux Klan rally in California in the 90s. From Fontana, I went to Second AME Church in Los Angeles, which was a big historic church that had been through some tough times. I had some leadership challenges, some tremendous financial challenges. Church was 7 months behind on its mortgage and all its bills, and the previous pastor had been put out the AME Church. We were able to bring the church back to fiscal solvency. We homeless outreach ministry there, where we started housing the homeless in the fellowship hall of the church. We also started a groundbreaking ministry to young people. We called it Teens for Greens, where we taught young people about how to reduce their carbon footprint and be more responsible ecologically. From there, I got moved to Ward AME Church, another church that was in distress. They were almost $4 million in debt, 17 months behind on the mortgage, some other issues. We were able to stop the bleeding there, brought the homeless outreach program there, a number of other initiatives. And then in October 2022, Bishop Few thought it not robbery to appoint me as the presiding elder of the Midwest North District in the Midwest Annual Conference.
Yes, I watched that. I was watching your previous sermons when you was at Ward a couple of years ago, and I came upon it because I'm subscribed to. I watch Dr. Settle's church service, and I'm familiar with him. And I also I know your son, one of your daughters in the ministry, Shanti Polk.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Sir. We're counting on Ashanti to finish her education and get out here on the battlefield and do great things.
yes. I just had an interview with her when I first started back. We was talking about walking in obedience, and when I asked her, she said, "Sure, let's get this done." And she was one of my favorite guests, along with I have a whole lot of favorite guests. And I was like, this podcasting, I said, podcasting is very beneficial. It brings people voices that's never been heard before. And I like this podcast because I tell you, I don't know what I would be doing if I didn't have it.
Well, the issue, Derek, is that what would we do if you don't have it? Yeah, you think it's just a little small podcast, but two things. Number one, it's going to live forever because it never goes away on the internet. Number two, you don't know who's up scrolling through YouTube, looking word, looking for some inspiration, looking to be challenged, and they happen across the Vigilant podcast.
Yes.
You know,
Yes. And then it's like what brings me to my next one. What is one lesson you were taught in your ministry that you tell other people about?
can I pick two?
Yes.
The first lesson is always find a way to say yes. My father in ministry, the late Reverend Dr. Cecil L. Chip Murray, uh,
Mm-hmm.
always said, if there's a way to do something, do it. Don't just turn things down with a categorical no. Now, it may take some doing to find a way to say yes, because some people may want to do things in a ridiculous way that
Mm-hmm.
don't make sense, but then you engage with them to see how can we make it work, how can we get there from here, and a lot of times people don't want to engage in the hard work of thinking of new ways to do something, or new
Mm-hmm.
ways somewhere, but that's what we should do as a church: find a way to make things happen instead
Mm-hmm.
of go to everything. The other lesson I was taught, and I tell people all the time, is that we have to be forward thinking. We always have to think about the future in ministry. And I tell this story all the time. I'm gonna tell it one more time. I pastored a small church, um, where we weren't in the ghetto, we were in the barrio. We were in a Spanish speaking neighborhood, and we didn't have the ability to outreach to the Spanish speaking people.
Mm-hmm.
We got an opportunity to sell that church for an impressive amount of money, which would have allowed us to buy another church free and clear in a growing Black community. The members of the church chose not to take that offer. They wanted to stay in the neighborhood because grandma and grandpa had met there and whatnot. 10 years later, I was gone. They ended up closing the church, and they sold the property, and they sold the property for a quarter of what we could have sold it for 10 years earlier. And so rather than selling, moving, and having a thriving church someplace else, the people chose to stay, and the church died.
Mm.
So I always tell people, as much as you love your church now, think about your church in the future and what's the best thing that can happen to it in the future.
Okay. Okay. You're appealing to other people and telling them what to do because I tell people all the time, it's like you've been taught lessons in your life, but it's what you do with the lessons. You have to teach other people the lessons that you've been taught
Yep.
and everything. So it's I love being taught lessons, and I can teach lessons to people, but I can't make them be lead them to be heard, lead them to be taught. Because if I lead, the only person can do that is God. I'm just a vessel.
Right. Right. You can put the information out there, but if they don't eat it, if they don't ingest it, there's nothing you can do except, Lord, I did my part.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And then it is like our last question that I have for you before we'll finish is, if you were to die tomorrow, what is one thing you want to be remembered by?
I want to be remembered for loving my wife all the way unto death, and I
Mm-hmm.
want to be remembered for being kind to people who didn't expect kindness.
That is good. I expect kindness. Amen. So we have reached our end of our interview. To the people out there, please like, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm trying to get more subscribers. If you want to support my podcast, and don't send all donations to my Cash App. It's at the bottom of scrolling on the screen in the comment section. Derek Lamont D is my Cash App. Um, First of all, I want to thank Presiding Elder John Keeger for joining me today. Um, if you would like to send any guests to my podcast, I'm trying to get more people on to make this a big thing. Send them my way. I would greatly appreciate it, Elder.
All
Uh,
righty.
and you can send this out. I will send this to you in a couple minutes so you can share and do whatever you want with it.
Well, thank you, Derek. I appreciate being a guest. I did put the information on my social media, and when you get the link, I'll do that as well.
Okay, thank you. So
Yeah.
we are done.
All right. Take care.
You too.